36 years young, Tony Ferguson, coming off of his first major loss in the UFC to Justin Gaethje. And the champion, Khabib, says he's done. He's washed. I don't know if I necessarily agree with that. But Ant, Drake, I want to hear what you guys feel about the latest comments from Khabib saying that he is finished and that he won't be the same fighter after taking so much damage in that fight.
I think Khabib is, what he's saying is rooted in, looking at past examples of fighters after coming off of some really devastating losses. But let's see what Tony looks like once he gets back in the cage before we start making assessments like that. This is a gentleman who has bounced back in some really improbable circumstances in his fights before. He's had the bad habit of getting dropped routinely and whatnot, still finds a way to win. So maybe this is just a big example of him getting dropped, and now he's got to come back and find a way to win again. And it's another challenge for him. I don't think that he is necessarily not ready for that challenge. I just want to give him the chance to fulfill that. And I think coming from Khabib Nurmagomedov, who has been linked to fight Tony Ferguson no less than 4 or 5 times at this point. There, and you saw from that last press conference that they had together, there is some level of animosity there that would probably tinge his opinion of his rival, that, the blue ball rival, I'll call it. It's just never got that nut to fight. So I think those feelings are clouding, otherwise logical judgment. I mean, everyone loses in mixed martial arts at some point if you stay in there long enough. And Tony Ferguson managed to get 12 wins in a row in the toughest division in the UFC, in the sport period, against some of the most elite names that we've ever seen. So to count him out because he lost to another elite name, I just can't ride with that right now.
Yeah, no doubt. There's a lot of frustration for sure. I'm sure on his end with the canceled fights and everything that they've been through as potential opponents over the years. So maybe that's where this kind of statement is coming from. Give us a thumbs up on the video and subscribe to the channel. Drake, do you believe that Khabib is kind of like frustrated with Tony Ferguson as a potential opponent because people keep mentioning him as a potential opponent?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure he is, especially since Tony just lost. I mean, Khabib wants to fight, the best challengers out there. And Tony is not it at the moment because he just lost. Let's see how he looks in his next fight, like Ant said, coming off of a very clear loss and, got beat up pretty bad against Gaethje. And, I think that there is an argument to say that he's maybe reaching, I never like to call anybody washed, first of all, but if we're going to say what it is, that he's reaching that point, I don't think you can say it, especially after losing, just one fight into a very top, high level guy. You can't really say that about a lot of people who are in that spot and, lose no matter how badly it is. If it's at the highest level of their division. So I think there's an argument, though, just because we have seen, even in that streak that Tony went on, he's been very hittable, but just been able to survive and then come back and beat people in some cases. Obviously, probably the one that stands out the most would be the Lando Venata fight on short notice, where he was really getting beat down, got dropped like twice or so in that first round, and then, came back, got the Darce. But the point is, he's taken a lot of punishment despite not losing, and then took a lot of punishment when he actually did lose. So, yeah, I think there's argument that, okay, this might have put him to the point where he's not going to be able to recover from taking all this damage at this point, despite not seeing him, lose very frequently. But I don't think you can say that, with an 100%, firm stamp on it until we see how he looks in this next one, which will probably be against another high level guy. So even if he loses badly there, you could still say, okay, we don't really know yet. If we see him get destroyed by, like, let's say somebody coming up like, I don't know, Drew Dober, I guess. Like, that would be, even though Drew Dober is looking very good right now too in his own right, but somebody who's like back in the top 15, right? Or if he was to get destroyed like that, then obviously, okay, Tony Ferguson isn't the same, but I wouldn't go there just yet.
Yeah, there's really a lot to, I guess we would have to see from Tony Ferguson in his next outing to really even entertain the idea that he's washed. And for me, it would take not only the next fight, but then the fight after that. because, fighters hit 2 fight skids every now and again. Great fighters do. And then they rebound from them. We see it happen all the time. It depends on how he looks. If he does go out there and lose, let's say he does be that first guy to welcome Michael Chandler to the UFC. How does Michael Chandler look against him? We got to think like Justin Gaethje put his paws on him for 5 rounds, right? But Tony Ferguson never went out. It wasn't like, he got knocked out. He wasn't like his game got completely shut down, but he was getting rocked. And like you were saying, Drake, the defense has never really been there for him when it comes to, being an elusive fighter defensively. I think back to an interview I had with Kevin Lee years back where he was like, oh, he's got Homer Simpson defense. He's very, very hittable. And that's one of those things where if you're able to just avoid the awkwardness that he brings to the cage, you're going to have success finding his chin. But how long can you do that? And before he starts taking over is really the question. So I guess my question to you, Ant, is the next fight going to really answer that question? Or in my opinion, do we need to see at least 2 more fights out of him before you're ready to stamp the wash label on him?
I think before we can officially say washed, I think we're probably going to need beyond 2 fights. I think back to guys like Carlos Condit and Robbie Lawler, who it took us a long amount of time to look back and say, okay, their fight against each other changed them forever. They were never the same after that. I think we'd have to get a certain level of distance from that fight to be able to say for certain that Tony Ferguson was washed as a result of the Justin Gaethje bout. So maybe, the only exception to that is if Ferguson comes out there and, like Drake said, he loses to a guy who's coming up on the top 15 that isn't necessarily a world beater, but is a very good fighter. Or if he gets out there and he just looks listless. If he has one of those performances where it looks like he just doesn't want to be there, then I think we can start having that conversation. But if we get something that looks that looks similar to the Tony Ferguson that we know and appreciate, I'm not quite ready to throw that label on him, at least for another couple years or so. And then looking back on the body of work that he's put together since that Gaethje fight and comparing the results and looking at some of the stats and just seeing how he's approaching it. But I think it's also important to remember too, like, he got beat up really bad in that fight, but how much time is he going to take off? He was trying to fight Dustin Poirier on this upcoming card, 254. If I've got the numbers right, I forget all the numbers now because they all just jumble up. But anyway, so with that fight now gone, say he has another 6 months or so on the shelf. I think that's enough time to heal. That's enough time to kind of get your bearings back. And if there was any confidence issues, to hopefully address those and step back in the cage renewed. So there are a lot of X factors in there. But unless we see something really, really extreme, we can't say he's washed anytime soon.
And I want to bring up something too real quick. It's kind of a rare case, but, there have been cases where we've written a guy off like he's totally done. We can see it, right? But then they surprise us. Now, tell me if you guys can think of who I'm going to mention here, but at heavyweight, Andre Arlovsky, man, he's had two stints of man, why is he still fighting? And then he gets on winning streaks again and is looking better than ever. You're like, what's happening here? That might be a rare situation with just him. No one else is coming to mind off the top of my head, but it's harder than we think it is sometimes. Usually it seems like we're right in those cases, but hey, you don't know till you know, I guess.
No, for sure. And to bring it back to focus on Khabib, who made these comments, how much do you guys think this is just Khabib being frustrated with dealing with this upcoming fight against Gaethje? Because, he's getting asked all these questions about Conor, and he's just it seems like he's just frustrated with everything surrounding media and everything outside of that fight, because he said he wouldn't accept $5 billion to do tough with Conor McGregor. And that's just silly, because if somebody literally offered you $5 billion, you're going to do it no matter what it is, especially if it's simply sitting in the tough gym for 2 months. Yes, you're going to make that amount of money. But it just seems like he's just kind of frustrated and irritated with everything going on right now. And I don't know how much of that is going to detract from his upcoming bout against Gaethje. What do you guys think?
I quite honestly, I don't think that's going to distract him in the cage, but so much. He clearly is frustrated with the questioning about opponents that he's not facing. Like we said earlier, I mean, him and Tony Ferguson have been linked to fight each other for years now. So he's been answering questions about Tony Ferguson since 2013. He's probably sick of hearing the man's name. Conor McGregor, who he's had this long-standing feud with, and all the back and forth with the commission about the brawl and everything, he's probably sick of that man's name too. And beyond the fact that their camps have had other incidents with one another that didn't necessarily make the public knowledge or whatever. But so you're talking about two people whose names he has to constantly talk about that right now are not factored into his life. But in reality, he's dealing with a lot more than Tony Ferguson questions. Like, his father just passed and he's lost a lot of relatives to COVID-19, and his village has been decimated. And there's so many things that have to go into that this is probably, it's just a mild irritant compared to the other things that he is dealing with in his actual life. But I think it's also important to remember that he is, last I checked, he's like the most followed Russian athlete on Instagram. So he's a huge celebrity in Russia. So, and in the Muslim world, period. And now imagine the level of media that he has to do, the amount of times that he has to hear someone asking questions about Tony Ferguson and or Conor McGregor. And keep in mind, when you're that level of celebrity, you're going to be talking to a lot of media that doesn't necessarily cover MMA. So you're probably dealing with a lot of dumbass questions. He's probably sick of dumbass questions. And I think that's more so with this. You just don't be a dumbass when you talk to him, and everything will be fine. That's probably, and I think too, Khabib has also been a guy who routinely has blinded himself from those distractions in the cage. Someone who despises Conor McGregor from the pit of his soul, but methodically broke him down and didn't go completely nuts, at least until after the fight was over with. Like, this is a guy who has a unique level of discipline and a unique level of focus. If somebody from, the St. Petersburg version of Home and Garden is not going to ask him anything that's going to rattle him to the point where he loses focus on a killer like Justin Gaethje in front of him.
Yeah, I don't think there's any chance of Khabib losing focus, no matter who he's going against. Obviously, I think you can just look at the Conor fight and build up for all that. But yeah, I agree. And I think, like, you look at the size of superstar that he has become, that, just media in general for him is probably a little bit annoying. Like, if he had the option not to do it, I'm sure he would, because he doesn't really need to anymore, right? He's reached that size of star that it's like, all right, people know who I am. I'm just going to go and do my thing, right? But I have these obligations where I do have to go and do this. People want me to do this, yada, yada, yada. And I think it's also a little bit of just a reoccurring theme where it seems like people like to, because of how good and dominant he has been, people like to talk about not his opponents when he has a fight lined up, right? Like, all right, what is next? What about this person and what they're doing? Like, seems like people kind of overlook the opponent for him. And he's like, you guys, I'm going against one of the best, I'm going against Justin Gaethje here. This guy's no joke, right? He's like, why don't you help me focus? Because I'm trying to stay focused. It's like they're trying to take him off of the track that he is so, lined up for. And especially in this case, with all these outside elements, like we're talking about with his family, that, yeah, it's probably a little bit extra at this point in his career, with everything considered. So, yeah, I just think it's a bit of all these things have piled up to this moment,
And I think, like, you hit the nail right on the head there when you talked about extra and all these other elements, because that's one thing that's really missing from this fight with Gaethje. You look at the Conor fight, obviously, we all know everything surrounding that. You look at Tony Ferguson as an opponent, the multiple attempts at trying to get that fight together, and it took a global pandemic to stop it this time. There's just so much built up behind these other opponents that everybody keeps mentioning, when it's like Justin Gaethje, oh, he's the interim champ. I mean, like, there's no other storyline there with him and Khabib, really. So it's kind of like, I get your point to where you're saying, like, maybe he's just, super frustrated with everything and just like, let me focus on this guy and worry about all that other stuff at another date. But The last thing I'll say I'll ask you guys on this. He did mention in a recent interview where he did say 30-0 would be the perfect, time to retire for him. 28-0 right now. If he gets through Gaethje, that'd be 29. So if he has one more, who is that last guy for Khabib before he gets out of here?
GSP. It's got to be GSP. If you have it be like if it's a guy who has earned a lightweight title shot, so be it. That's fine. I don't think anybody would have an issue with that. But for potentially the greatest lightweight of all time, going out on because he's fighting I don't know. Let's just say Kevin Leaf climbed his way back up to lightweight contention. Like, yeah, that's cool, but that's not the punctuation to an all-time great career. GSP is the guy, and also it eliminates the problem that the UFC has had with booking that fight before, because you don't have to really worry about George vacating the belt if he wins, because the belt's going to be vacated anyway if unless that unnamed challenger is going to defeat Khabib. If history is any indication, they probably won't. And if Justin Gaethje doesn't get it done, then probably nobody at 155 that we know of right now is going to get it done. So just go ahead and make that huge splash with the money. Go ahead and make that huge splash with the fans. Go ahead and just put on a fight that can have all sorts of different levels of just historic implications and just amazingness. And just do it. Just stop hating fun, because you don't even have to worry about what happens to the belt afterward, because it's going to get vacated and the division is going to have to pick itself up anyway. So let's just do it.
Yeah. Anyone besides GSP for you, Drake?
No, I don't have much to add to that. Ant absolutely summed it up 1,000% perfectly. I love that matchup so much. And anyone who says that they don't like it is a liar, I think. No matter how old GSP is getting, come on, how do you not love that fight? I think I hope we get to see it. And it seems like the absolute perfect option, for him to retire on, to get that 30-0 or 29-1. Who knows? Either way, that's a good idea for his last fight, I think. And it's just something like we've had enough talk about it now that it's like, come on, please, let's see it. Let's please talk it into existence. Anything besides that, I mean, I would have said like a welterweight title shot, but then that presents the problem of if he wins, then you open up two divisions on accident by having him win that. But that would obviously be the biggest thing, I think. Other than that, I think the GSP one is totally perfect. In terms of matchups, I would love to see him against Chandler just because, or Charles Oliveira because of, the game that he's, the challenge that he would present with his style. But nothing is as good as the GSP one. I don't think there's any debate about that.
I think you both are crazy. If Khabib retires without us getting that Tony Ferguson fight, I will riot. And that's something that we should not have to accept as MMA fans, given all the multiple times that fight has fallen through. We must reschedule and reschedule and reschedule till the end of time.
Yeah, but the level of disaster is just going to keep escalating as well. So global pandemic now, nuclear war next, alien invasion after that to prevent this fight from happening. And then on top of that, now that Tony Ferguson has lost to Justin Gaethje, while I still think style wise, he might present more problems to Khabib than Gaethje will. Still, now the fight lost so much luster because it was so built up because the undefeated record of Khabib and the historic win streak by Tony Ferguson. Now you don't have that. Now you don't have that one fight that would have decided the greatest lightweight of all time. Had that fight taken place at the time it was going to take place before, someone ate a bat and just like destroyed the entire world, then we would have one fight determining the greatest lightweight of all time. We don't have that anymore. If Tony Ferguson, say he were to win one more and then face Khabib, and if he wins that, asterisk next to that greatest label. So it takes some of the luster off. GSP is the correct answer.
Listen. If Khabib versus Ferguson is a catalyst that brings about the end of man, I'm okay with that, as long as we keep trying to make the fight happen. Leave a comment below. Let us know who Khabib should fight for his final fight if he does retire at 30, trying to make it 30-0. And also, for that matter, who should Tony Ferguson fight when he returns? Let us know in the comments below. We would appreciate it. Thumbs up, subscribe to the channel.
Yeah, and share it if you want cockroaches to inherit the earth just to make Tony versus.
Yes, you know you do. You know you do. You know that's what you want, people.